All right, guys, so now let's talk about some of the things that are going to decide which pass you end up using. Okay, so the thing with the Torreando is basically the two finish variations I showed you, the finish is always going to look something like that, but how you get there is going to change depending on the positioning of your opponent's body. So let's talk about some of the variables that are going to decide what you do. Okay, the first thing I look at if the guy's centered and on his back like this is the elevation of his legs. I define it as low, medium, and high. Low is the guy's legs are basically parallel to the floor. In this case, it's like walking around traffic cones. It's very easy to Torreando because the guy's not really defending it, right? So that's like kind of the first case I showed you in the initial video. It's just hitting here. Mid is where the guy's feet are aimed around your chest like this. This is a little bit more difficult because if I just grab the pants, his feet are in my biceps, and now I have to kind of deal with that and like re-grip, or he might get spidered if I stay there too long. So there's things to deal with that one. The other one is, I call it like self-stacking or high. And that's basically where the guy, exactly, he lifts his legs like this. And the issue that this can cause is that I want a Torreando, but his legs are so high it's difficult. So you need to almost try to bring them down, but sometimes they're so high that's difficult, right? So then there's different things you have to resolve with that situation, okay? So low, medium, high. The other thing I may be looking at, if we understand the positioning that we were looking at before, is the angle of his hips, right? This is like a center fighting opponent. Some guys will side tilt, right? He'll be on this almost like a knee shield type position, right? So it's kind of like on the side. So if you think about it, I need to turn his hip over this way. He's already turned this way, right? Or if I went to this side now, go ahead and stay on that side, yeah. Now if I suddenly went to this side, for example, he's already turned in the way I want. So that's just something that you have to consider. It's like a factor to consider. The thing with the Torreando pass is it's a bit of a it's one of the simplest passes in Jiu-Jitsu because it's like if you grab someone off the street, intuitively you told them to get around someone's legs, they would probably do something similar, just grab the legs and throw, right? So it's very simple, but it's also very complicated. If you're trying to break it down, there's a lot of variables, right? So the easiest thing I can say is ping off of the initial start pass of what it feels like to get that finish position for both the north-south and the side, and then we're gonna push through and learn different combinations. Okay, so the next thing to consider is the grips that he has on you. So if you watch my guard retention video, I often talk about like the guys framing the floor, like with their elbow on the floor, like framing their hip and preventing their hip from getting turned over. So there's a big correlation in understanding guard retention and being able to pass well, because you understand how the guy's hips function and where he's supposed to be. So one thing that happens often is guys will grab grips too soon when they're on bottom. And what that does is it makes it easier for you to pass in some ways. So for example, if I was here and he was holding my sleeve, I know he can't frame his hip to prevent his hip to turn. If he doesn't grab the sleeve from your hip, then it's a little bit harder to turn his hip over because he's framing, okay? So understanding that the grips the guy has on you will affect how you end up doing it, right? If the guy's holding my ankle or my pants with his hand here and like the Olahiba, then I can't step back, but then maybe I can create a quick pass. So those are the things they're gonna be deciding, okay? So what I want basically from this section is for you guys to understand that when you're doing the Torreando, don't try to think like, I'm gonna do the Torreando this way every time. The setup and how you get there may vary, but the finish is always gonna look roughly the same. So yeah, when the guy is grabbing grips too soon and stuff, often what will happen is he's not framing on the floor and it affects how his hips react, right? So if I'm here and he grabs the sleeve too soon, when I turn him, there's no resistance for his hip to turn. If he's framing his hip on the floor when I go, then there's more pressure in this, making it easier for this foot to fight in, right? Same thing, like if the guy was holding my ankle and I'm trying to pass or something, then like I know if I throw him this way that he doesn't have that resistance, right? Or if he grabs the sleeve over on this side, when I go here, he's going to be weak in that sense, right? So the basic idea is just that you want to understand that what the guy's doing, his body positioning, is what's going to cause your reactions, right? Nothing in jiu-jitsu is like exists in isolation. You can't, I'm going to do this move every time. It doesn't work that way, right? Like you have to pay attention to what the guy's doing. Just like if it was boxing and the guy is like, you know, leaving his left hand down, then maybe the right is going to be easier than the jab, right?